Today we have a 1989 Ferrari Mondial T. Going to be pulling the engine out of it. It needs clutch, needs timing belt, and the major service done, which includes like the valve adjustment. So we're going to get to it. So this car's real oily. You can see there's a lot of grime and oil just kind of all over the place under here. And up in here is one of the reasons pulling the engine out. You can see that's that oil up by the timing cover. It's coming out of the cam seal there and on the other side. I'm just gonna start by removing the wheels, getting those fender liners out of there so we can see a little bit more what we're doing. So on top, we're gonna start by taking the air filter box out, these hoses, and the mass airflow meters. Now that the air box is out, we need to disconnect the O2 sensor wiring because we have to pull the exhaust off. You can kind of trace them and see this is going to that O2 sensor right there and it comes up along here. So we need to disconnect this one and then also the one on the other side that's coming in here right behind the oil filter. Right here, you'll see where my extension is going. There's a nut on each side with a bracket that holds the wiring for the O2 sensor.
Off my silly head, man.
So for the bumper, we just need to take these two on each side of the bumper off, and then it just slides right off the back. Back here on the catalytic converters, you'll see there's these two pieces here which are like EGT sensors. We need to take both of those out. After getting those flanges loose, then you got to take these 4 bolts off. There's 2 on here and 2 on the other side, and then just pull these out of the way and pull the exhaust out. So because we're taking the whole subframe down to get this engine out, we need to take this spring off of the brake cables. Then we're going to have to back this off, get this cable adjuster off of here. Need to remove this lower shield. This one's kind of damaged. Yours may look better than this, but we're going to take that off. So you got to evacuate the air conditioning system. This one is still R12. I'm assuming most of them probably still are. This one is kind of tricky to get to behind the compressor. I kind of went up over the motor mount, but you can get on them. After evacuating the system, you're going to want to disconnect these lines at these fittings. There's one there, and then you can see the other one. It's kind of up in there. So draining the coolant from the front here, both of these pipes, they have a drain plug on them, so it makes it pretty easy to get the coolant out of there. So then we're gonna need to drain the oil. You can drain it from that plug there. Then we also need to drain it from this oil tank because you have to take this oil line off here, which I'm not sure the exact size. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 7/8". I use channel locks, it worked just fine. Okay, so now we need to take these lines off of the fuel filters. You can see kind of down in there. There's one on either side. There's a few hoses down here that needed to be taken off. We had this one went to there, and then this one went to here. Once those are out of the way, we also need to take, there's one hose that comes back next to this coolant reservoir that needs to come off because it's going to get in the way. The coolant reservoir, I'm probably going to have to unbolt it to get to the wiring harness down in there, but the hoses I believe can stay on because the subframe is coming with the engine and transmission. So now we're in the back of the car. There's an access panel behind these rear seats. You take off, then you can see a lot of what you need to get to. You got like the coolant hoses back here. There's like the main battery connection and a few other things we're gonna have to disconnect back here. Okay, so back here, we've got, there's a vacuum line that needs to be disconnected. Kind of goes up in here. There was a zip tie holding it up here. And then there's the battery connection there. The throttle cable needs to be disconnected at the throttle body and then pulled through, which there's a bolt, there's a nut that's like down there. It's very tricky to get to. I was able to get to it with a 10 wrench to get that disconnected. And then while you're back here, you've got both the fuel pressure regulators, the lines, disconnect those. And then these coolant hoses, you can get these hose clamps loose. On this one, these hoses are really stiff, so I think what I'm gonna have to do is wait until I get the engine mounts loose, kind of move the engine back a little bit, and maybe I can get it to come off that way. We'll see. On these strut tops, we need to take these solenoids off. It'll make it a lot easier for when the subframe's coming out, because otherwise your wiring is gonna get in the way of coming down through that hole. There's a little clip right here you can pull out, and then this just slides off. I would mark it before you take it off because it's kind of indexable and it can kind of go on any way. So once you pull it off, it'll look like this. And you'll notice if you look down in there, like that will turn. Like don't mess with it once you get it off of there. Just make sure it goes right back on in the same way it came off. You gotta take this carpet down in the trunk to get to all these electronics back here because we gotta disconnect all these electrical connectors and push all the wiring through. A few more lines that need to be taken off. You can see this one here. That one kind of goes up in that area. And then there's one way up in there which you can get from the top. It just kind of unscrews for this carbon canister. Over in this area you can see you got the parking brake cables disconnected here. Gonna need to take this power steering line off. And then there's also the brake line, which is, you kind of sort of see it like up in this area. You have to disconnect that. Here's a better view of that brake line situation. Now this shift cable box, this needs to come out. So this piece here pulls out, and then we can disconnect it. There's this bolt or the nut here. Then we got to take a couple of these out to pull the shift cables through. We're on this side where we had taken this oil tank line off. There's also another one up in here, you can see right here, that we have to take off, right by these AC lines. So I'm starting to get this engine ready to come out. We don't have a proper table, so we have a trailer. We've pulled engines out with it before and it works. It's not ideal, but in any case, make sure you take these off before you start unbolting things in the bottom, because otherwise it'd be a pain to get to those. One thing to keep in mind when removing the engine, it's a good idea to strap it to the hoist so it doesn't come off the hoist, because obviously the front end's gonna be a lot heavier. I just wrapped it around these two frame horns and then around the hoist. The engine, these two hoses, they get hung up on the front of the engine on those two pieces there. As soon as you drop it down a little bit, you can pull, I was able to pull the right one off. The left one, I had to go quite a bit further down with the engine before it would come off, but that was the only way they would come out of there because there just isn't enough room. When the engine's coming out, you'll notice that these pieces right here on the top of the struts actually hang up on the bracketry that's up there, and had a hell of a time getting out of there. Had to use like a pry bar to get it to pry these over because they kept getting jammed up right in this area. Alright guys, that's going to wrap it up on the engine removal for this Ferrari Mondial T. Until next time, peace out.